I don't know what Deion Sanders' asking price is for Colorado, but they should really pay him.
You are Locked On Buffs, your daily podcast on the Colorado Buffaloes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Buffs. I'm your host, Kevin Borba. Today's episode is brought to you by TurboTax. Ready for stress-free taxes and the most money back guaranteed? Head over to TurboTax.com today and get matched with your expert. We're also brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for free and available wherever you get your podcast. So make sure to like, subscribe, and follow so that way you don't miss out on a moment of the coverage. And I want to thank you guys for making me your first listen of the day. We just hit 7,000 subscribers finally. I appreciate all of you guys. The show would not be possible without you. Let's talk about what everyone wants to know about right now about Colorado. And it's not the quarterback battle because it's been one day, right? We don't have the quarterback battle settled already. If we did, that means someone's either generationally better than we thought or someone's not as good as we had hoped. So let's talk about Deion Sanders and his salary. So if you guys don't know why I'm talking about this, Coach Prime sort of video bombed Neely, Uncle Neely, if you will, and they were doing their show. And he was talking about Boulder. He's like, it's beautiful out here, blah, 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 this, and that. And then he sort of hit Colorado fans with or at least the show, with a quick little message where it was like, tell the people to quit playing with them and give me my money, which means Colorado has not paid him what he feels like he deserves. Now, there were rumors, there were murmurs, there were reports that Colorado had a very, 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 very good offer on the table for him in January. So that was 2 months ago now, or at least kind of 2 months ago. And it wasn't signed. Deion Sanders did not sign the paper. And then all of a sudden he ended up linked to the Raiders job. He ended up linked to the Cowboys job. And it was like, okay, is Deion Sanders on his way out? And obviously he stuck around. And he's in his third year of a 5-year, $29.5 million contract, which he signed back in 2022. But he's clearly, at least from my end, there's a sense of disrespect, or there's a sense of like Colorado wanting to see more from him. And I think if you're Colorado, this is not when you try to get cute. This is not when you try to assert your dominance of like, hey, we don't abide to one person at this program. Like we're not at the hand of like, you have let Deion Sanders come in here, build your roster through the transfer portal. You have let Deion Sanders come into Boulder and sell his merchandise. You've let him come into Boulder with the Amazon Prime crew, with his son filming for Well Off Media, with Neely filming for his channel. And you've let him do whatever he wants, right? His sons were on the team. You let Travis Hunter play both ways, right? You have let Deion Sanders step into Boulder, and rather than it being Colorado, like your university, right? It's that's not what it is, right? It is Coach Prime University. It is the University of Colorado Boulder at Coach Prime, right? It's not like the University of Colorado Boulder with Coach Prime. It is at Coach Prime, right? You have let him do everything he wants, and now this is where you get hesitant, right? I think what Colorado needs to do, because I talked about it a little bit yesterday. One, he is simply not being compensated enough, right? You look at where he gets paid in terms of the Big 12. We'll just go. Mike Gundy leads the way at $7.7 million. Lance Leipold 7.5, and these numbers are based off of this past year. Kyle Whittingham at 6.5, and then Coach Prime at 5.7. I think he's got to be the highest paid coach in the Big 12, right? You think about all the value he's brought in, over $100 million to the local economy. Season tickets are flying off the shelves. For the fiscal year, according to The Athletic, Colorado reported a record $31.2 million in revenue and ticket sales for the 2023 season, his first in Boulder, and that was up $13 million from the year prior. And that's number has probably continued to rise because Colorado was on national television every single week this past season, which I think they were just one of two teams to do just that. And listen, here's some other jarring numbers. $113.2 million brought into the economic impact. Excuse me, I read that wrong. $113.2 million brought into economic impact. 8 million viewers watched their Alamo Bowl game against BYU. Granted, BYU played a role in that. That being said, the most watched bowl game that wasn't a playoff game. Highest AP ranking since 2016. Second time they finished in the college football playoff ranking. and they were obviously in the Big 12 championship mix. They were in the college football playoff mix, which is a first. He signed 3 out of the top 6 highest ranked recruits in program history: Jordan Seaton, Cormani McClain, Julian Lewis. Obviously, McClain's no longer with the program, but Julian Lewis plays the most important position in football, quarterback, that is. And you bring him in, and sort of he's the face of your program right now, or he will be the face of your program if he's not yet. So he's done all this stuff, and Colorado seemingly has not given him the money that he deserves, and I don't understand why. Right? He's building up a staff. Right? Robert Livingston is probably one of the best young coaches in college football. He will probably be getting a head coaching job in college football next year, or if he wants it, a defensive coordinator job at the NFL level if he wants to return to that level. And then he brings in Marshall Faulk to help boost the program's notoriety. Same thing with Damian Lewis, Warren Sapp. They lost Damian Lewis. They bring in all these guys. They brought in Pekka to replace Lewis. They bring in all these guys, right? And so Coach Prime is doing everything he can do to push your program really on the map, right? Because Colorado wasn't on the map. I'll find up the Pac-12 viewership numbers back when this was like a whole thing, because I feel like a lot of people, I don't think people were really registering just how serious this was of a, I guess, turnaround, because Colorado's the most watched program in the Big 12. And so this was Colorado in 2022. So this was when conference realignment was happening and all this. So rank of viewership: Oregon, 1.96 million viewers. This is per game. Stanford, 1.83. Washington, 1.73. Washington State, 1.59. Colorado, 1.49. Right? Colorado was the 6th most watched team in the Pac-12 in 2022, and now they're one of the most watched programs in the country. And that's because of Deion Sanders. It's the Coach Prime effect. He's going to pump out probably, we'll say 2 first-round picks now. I don't know if Shedeur is viewed as a top 5 pick anymore, but I know he has top 5 talent, but that's a whole discussion for a different day. Coach Prime has generated so much interest, so much money, so much progress on the field, right? You have to invest in him. You've let him sort of do things his way, invest in him, and make sure there's a buyout where it's like, oh, we don't have to pay you X amount of dollars if you leave by this point. Or if you're worried about him leaving, figure out a way to cover your you-know-what, so that way it's not like you're getting skirned or burned in the process, right? Because if Coach Prime leaves because you didn't give him all the resources he wanted, that's one thing. That's a disaster. That could be a nightmare. That could be, either way, it's going to be tough on the program. But if Coach Prime leaves simply because he goes, hey, you know what? I'm not really having as much fun coaching anymore. I thought I could coach without my sons, but it just isn't for me. I've got into this to coach my sons, and now that they're not playing, I don't really want to do this anymore. That's not your fault, right? You can only do so much if someone doesn't want to be in a job or in a role, right? You can only do so much to keep them there. You're not going to keep them hostage or be like, but blah, 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 like this is what you want. And no, you make sure that if he leaves, it's because you did everything you could, and it simply comes down to it wasn't what he wanted anymore. That's just what it has to come down to. So if I'm Colorado, I'm making him the highest paid coach in the Big 12. And I also think that there's room to sort of flirt with him being a top paid, probably top 25 paid coach in college football. And even if you want to acknowledge like how much value he brings to your program, if you're going to have value, you probably make him a top 12, top 10 paid quarterback coach. Because you got Kirby at 13 million. He's the number one. Dabo at 11. Steve Sarkisian at, I think he's got 10, which will be 11 in the coming years. Ryan Day at 10, Mike Norvell at 10, Kalen DeBoer at 10, Brian Kelly 9.9, right? Brian Kelly, Mark Stoops, Lane Kiffin. Those guys are all making $9 million. Eli Drinkowitz, Josh Heupel, James Franklin 8.5. All those guys are probably more proven than Coach Prime. But if you're Colorado, you don't want to lose what you have. You don't want to lose what makes your program special. So you have to make it an investment, right? You have to take a chance. Because at the end of the day, if you lose him and he's doing well, your program's going to be set back. And if you lose him because he wasn't doing well, your program's already set back. So what do you have to lose, right? He's bringing in enough money to sort of pay for himself, if you will. So you may as well get a little risky out there. You know what I mean? When we come back, we're going to be talking about why Coach Prime thinks that this is a better team than last year. This episode of Locked on Buffs is brought to you by our sponsors over at Intuit TurboTax. This is a message from sponsor Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now, Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who could do your taxes as soon as today, an expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy, all so you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now, this is Taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service, real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. Welcome back to Locked on Buffs. Appreciate you guys for tuning in every single day, making me your first listen of the day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast. So make sure to like, subscribe, and follow so that way you don't miss out because we're going to have some fun guests coming up. Let's talk about it. Deion Sanders said something that I think I had talked about before, so I'm kind of glad being here on the same wavelength. But it's something that I think not a lot of people are ready to admit or willing to admit or maybe even are possibly aware of. But he said that this is a better team. This was on the YouTube video of Deion Sanders Jr. He said, we have a better team than we had last year, and we're going to prove it this spring. He said on Monday. And so he was talking to the team, and he's going, we have a better team. And you probably think, how, right? You're losing Travis Hunter, who's a top 5 pick. You're losing Shedeur Sanders, could be a top 5 pick. You're losing your starting wide receiver core, right? You're losing Travis Hunter, who's also a great corner. BJ Green, great pass rusher. Nikhai Hill Green at linebacker. He was really good. Levante Bentley, same thing. Cameron Summer Craig, Shiloh Sanders. You're losing a ton of talent, and you're just telling me that this team's better. Well, let me explain. This team, for the first time of really the Coach Prime era, is built on experience within the system, right? This is the first time that Deion Sanders has returned both coordinators, right? Colorado, he comes in year 1. It's Sean Lewis, it's Charles Kelly. Next year, it's Pat Shurmur, it's Robert Livingston. This year, Robert Livingston, Pat Shurmur. There's continuity there, right? You have depth. I think we kind of got used to these like 50-man transfer portal classes, and that wasn't the case. We saw it was still a really, I think, impressive transfer portal class. Ranks number 26 in the country according to the 24/7 Sports, but it's hitting the meats of what Colorado needs, right? You have offensive lineman, defensive lineman, right? You have a bunch of guys in the trenches. You have Jaheim Otis, who headlines this class as a guy who was probably the number 1 player in the transfer portal for a couple of weeks. He's 6'5", 320, Alabama transfer. They're expecting a ton out of him. You bring in Zach Atkins, a tight end, who can help open up the offense even more. And then you build around like what your strengths were, right? You needed more defense. So you bring in Reginald Hughes at linebacker. You bring in Martavius French at linebacker. That's your new duo. You also bring in Kylan Salter, possibly a linebacker. You bring in a great replacement for your safeties and Taufik Bayard. And then you bring in a handful of offensive linemen. You bring in Caden Salter, who's a veteran quarterback. And I think that this team is just more complete, right? I think last year they got away with hero ball. I think last year they got away with, okay, Shedeur, okay, Travis, save us. Or, okay, like LeJounte or whoever it is, make us a big play, right? This team feels like it could be more complete. That being said, I don't think the top end talent is there, but from a top to bottom standpoint, I think this team is better. Now, there's a lot of things that have to go their way. They obviously have a tough schedule. And FanDuel isn't really high on the Buffs in 2025, right? I believe that the win total was 6.5. So not too crazy. It's like basically they're saying you're going to be around a bowl game or at a bowl game. I think that's probably right. I think when I did my record projection, I think I had them at 7-5, 8-4. So we'll just have to wait and see how good this team can be. But if they modify the offense, which I talked about yesterday, if they modify the offense to help whoever's at quarterback, if they invest in the run game, if they get better play in the trenches, and they don't and they figure out ways to replace Travis Hunter, this team could be really good. In a Big 12, that's probably going to be, I'd say it's going to be similar to what it was last year, where there's it's going to be pretty competitive, right? There's probably going to be 6 teams that could contend for the Big 12 title when things are all said and done. So I think Colorado has a really good team. I'm glad Coach Prime agrees with me, and we'll just have to wait and see how all this unfolds. But I would have to say I'm pretty excited about what this team can be. When we come back, we're going to be talking about the NFL draft and sort of the biggest issues that Shedeur and Travis may run into and where they are projected to go in Athlon Sports' latest mock draft. This episode of Locked On Buffs is brought to you by Factor. Let me tell you about Factor Meals. Looking to optimize your nutrition this year, Factor makes eating well easy with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved meals that are fresh, never frozen, and ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes. With 40 options across 8 dietary preferences each week, you can customize your meals to fit your lifestyle, whether it's Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, or Keto. Plus, Factor even offers wholesome smoothies, breakfast, and grab-and-go snacks to keep you fueled all day long. I love Factor. It takes the stress out of meal planning. I recently tried the Protein Plus meals, helped me get a little more protein. Really good flavor, right? I was kind of surprised, right? You see these meal nutrition or these meal prep places from all these nutrition companies. It's like, okay, it's going to taste frozen, blah, blah, blah. Factor was really good. So eat smart with Factor. Get ready. Get started at factormeals.com/lockedoncollege50 off and use code LOCKEDONCollege50 off to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code LOCKEDONCollege50 off at factormeals.com/lockedoncollege50 off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. I wanted to talk about, first of all, I want to thank you guys for tuning in, making me your first listen of the day. Free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow. Don't miss out on a moment of our coverage, right? We're having a lot of fun things to talk about this year. It's the new era of Deion Sanders, new era of Colorado. Let's have some fun. But just because we're talking about the new era doesn't mean we have to forget about the guys who came before these young men. So I think Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders, program legends, right? I don't think you'll ever be able to talk about Colorado moving forward without their impact on the program. For better or for worse, whatever happens in the coming years, I think these guys really cemented themselves as program legends. That being said, I think they are 2 of the most confusing, polarizing, and mysterious NFL draft prospects we have in this class. So I wanted to go over sort of what I think the issues are that they have in terms of why teams may shy away from them and stuff like that. So let's start with Travis. And I talked about this before. Travis Hunter is a dynamic athlete. John Garcia Jr., he's a recruiting analyst at Rivals. He used to be my co-host over here at Locked On Buffs. He said that Travis had some of the best ball skills he had ever seen, right? And it's obvious. When he's playing receiver, when he's playing corner, it always looks like he is in a better position than whoever is covering him or whoever he is covering to catch the ball. He's like a contortionist. He can move in every which way. He's fast. He's athletic. A little bit of injury issues throughout the years. So I think that could be an issue in the NFL. But the biggest overlying issue that he's going to have is that teams eventually won't let him play both ways. And I say this because it's going to take one time for him to get banged up. It's going to take one time for him to make a mistake where it's just like, we can't have that, to where they're not going to let him play both ways. Now, he has said he wants to play both ways, and I think he will try. That being said, I don't know if it'll work out how he hopes, but I do know that if there was anyone who could do it, it would be Travis Hunter, right? He's a freak athlete, smart, super, super in tune in what he needs to do to take care of his body. So that's his sort of dilemma, right? If you're a team drafting Travis Hunter, you have to draft him with a plan, and you have to draft him knowing that he wants to play both ways. And I think he's a dynamic athlete. I like him with the ball in his hand, so I like him at receiver. I also think if I was Travis, you make more money as a receiver, and I don't think any NFL team is going to want to pay you for 2 positions because they've just have never done that. And so, yeah, that's my stance on Travis. Shedeur, on the other hand, and I'll talk about where they went in our mock draft athlon recently. Shedeur, on the other hand, is a guy who polished passer, smart, good leader, tough. Not super athletic, more athletic than I think people give him credit for. Not the biggest arm, really decent arm, though. I think the hardest part for him or at least from the outside looking in, is him and his team know where he wants to go, or they know where they want him to go. So he's not really available to all 32 teams like he is, but he's not, right? Because they've made it clear that there's certain teams that they want him to play for, and there's certain teams who they're like, we'd rather you not. So we'll just have to wait and see where he ends up. That being said, I do think that with all the free agency moves, it wouldn't shock me if his draft stock took a hit, just because it's like, hey, teams are taking swings on free agency quarterbacks. Why would they go out and draft a quarterback with a top 10 pick? I don't know. So we'll just have to wait and see. That being said, this is where our Luke Easterling had them going. He had Travis going number 2 to the Cleveland Browns. As a wide receiver says corner, he said, yes, the Browns need a franchise quarterback of their own. But if the buzz is true, that Shedeur Sanders is viewed around the league as more of a fringe first-round prospect than a top 5 pick, Cleveland might be more inclined to spin this pick on the best overall player, right? So you get Travis Hunter, and then it's like, okay, where does Shedeur fall? How far does he fall? Well, he hasn't fallen pretty far. Number 19. But he has the Browns trading back into the first round and drafting Shedeur. So Shedeur and Travis could team up again. I would like that, right? I think that'd be really entertaining. And I think the Browns would probably be more popular than they've ever been before, at least in my lifetime. But obviously, it all hinges on Shedeur. So those are my concerns about each of those guys. And that's where one of our local experts has them going. Comment below who goes first and how far does the other person fall. Let me know what you think. Thank you guys for tuning in to Locked On Buffs, making me your first listen of the day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow. And I will see you guys tomorrow.